The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Day 2 of impeachment watch. No, I'm just joking. We're not gonna cover it like that. Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am, of course, your host, Benjamin Dixon. I'm just messing with you guys. I am fascinated with how much people are really trying to find a way to be upset about this. And by people, I mean left. And by left, I mean leftists on Twitter. Unfortunately, I still live in the Twitterverse. And I think what happens on Twitter matters. That's why I talk about it. And I'm fascinated by how many leftists are trying to find a way to be upset about this impeachment. There's literally nothing to be upset about. Let it run its course. If it takes down Joe Biden, that's even better, right? I honestly don't think Joe Biden should be in this campaign. And I think this is if it subsequently, exposes him for having done something wrong, then fine. But that's neither here nor there. There's no equivalence between all of the violations of the emoluments clauses alone that Donald Trump has committed as the sitting president of the United States. So I'm just curious why people are posturing themselves to find a way to be upset about this. You're upset because people are celebrating Nancy Pelosi for finally doing what she should have done all along? I mean, fine, but so what? I have no problem with Nancy Pelosi getting credit for impeaching Donald Trump because at this point going forward, she's the one who's got to manage it. I mean, she should have done it a long time ago, but it's done. Here we are. It's in motion. So what's the problem? Like, why are we upset? It's going to take up and consume so much of the news. I think it is newsworthy for us to look at every single crime by the sitting president of the United States and examine it. We shouldn't just blow by it because it's going to present a news cycle that you don't like. I mean, hell, there's so many different news cycles that I just tune out on. But I don't attack the news cycle just because I don't like it. There are a lot of stories that I just don't even cover because I don't feel like it. Right. And it gets on my nerves. But that doesn't mean that it's any less important just because I'm not interested in it. People are comparing this to the Russia probe. Listen, I mean, politically speaking, I have a totally different perspective on the Russia probe than most of all of you. But it was a worthwhile investigation, right? It actually exposed enough. I mean, there was more to the Russia probe than there was the Benghazi probe by a lot. OK, and in fact, the only reason Donald Trump was not indicted from the Russia probe was because of the precedent that the DOJ won't indict a sitting president. Come on, folks. But I see some voices on the left and I guess I'm as much a critic of the left as I am anything else. Right. Wherever I smell BS, I call it out. I don't care if it's coming from the right. Actually, I prefer it coming from the right because that's my specialty. I don't care if it's coming from centrists. I'll criticize centrists, but I cannot believe all night last night. And it took a lot in me not to tweet in reply to a bunch of, but everyone's positioning themselves to be upset about this. Like they're either upset because people are celebrating Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, I understand totally that Rashida Tlaib called this, hell before that, Al Green, Congressman Al Green called for it. I think it was either he or Maxine Waters were the first ones to call for impeachment. So those are the people who are ultimately responsible for setting this in motion. But it required Nancy Pelosi. So I don't care. Acknowledge that it was Al Green, Rashida Tlaib, and Maxine Waters who set the ball in motion, right, and held the feet and held everyone's feet to the fire. But it also required Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House to set it in motion, ultimately, to officially commence. So what? So who cares if people are excited and celebrating and honoring? I mean, it's annoying. Don't get me wrong. It is annoying to see people be like, oh, Nancy Pelosi. And I'm like, Nancy was a little late to the party, but fine. It does. All of that is irrelevant. What is relevant is the fact that we now have the mechanisms in motion to hold this president accountable. there has been no greater example in our lifetime of a president getting away with basically daring us. I mean, doing everything in his power to violate his oath of office and then look at us and say, I dare you. Even now with this transcript. Let's talk about the transcript. I read through the quote unquote transcript that Donald Trump released from his conversation with the president of Ukraine, and where he asked for a favor. Donald Trump eagerly released the transcripts, the quote unquote transcripts. But as you begin to read the transcripts, the quote unquote transcripts, one of the very first lines that you see at the bottom of the first page is that this is everyone's best recollection. This is not a verbatim transcript of the call. So in other words, someone came in to document the conversation after the fact, and Donald Trump gave them his best recollection. It literally says on the paper, not a transcript. So Donald Trump releases this, and he is exonerating himself with his own best recollection. This is the type of game that he plays, and this is a thing that he feels like he could just get away with because no one was holding him accountable. And now we have the ability to hold him accountable. I don't care. Listen, everybody was like, what about George W. Bush? Why didn't we impeach him? Why was Nancy Pelosi against impeaching George W. Bush? Well, because there's a qualitative difference here, right? And hear me out. We impeached George W. Bush. First and foremost, if we were to impeach him, it would be over his war crimes. Here's the thing about war crimes. Every president, with maybe one exception, Jimmy Carter, has committed war crimes. By our personal definition, most certainly, and in some cases by international standards. So it's not as though Donald Trump can use that as an excuse. Oh, Nancy Pelosi didn't want to impeach George W. Bush and he was committing war crimes. Well, hey, guys, Donald Trump is committing very similar war crimes right now. It's a continuation. It's an extension of George W. Bush's. What am I saying? I'm saying if that is the excuse that he's going to come up with, if that's the reason that you're upset about that, I'm like, it doesn't hold water. It literally makes no sense. There's not a single excuse that I've seen people come up with for why they are upset at this impeachment proceeding that actually makes sense, with one observation that I've made. There are some people who are more committed to opposing the Democratic establishment than they are opposing the white supremacist in chief, the emolument clause violating grifter in chief. They are more committed to their hatred and their disdain for the DNC and for the Democratic Party as a whole than they are upset with Donald Trump and the damage that he's doing to this country, not only from his personal indiscretions and violations, but the policies that he's putting in place, the appointments that he's making. Everything about this presidency has caused irreparable damage. Or if it is repairable, it's going to take all of our lives. We're going to be gray. I've got grays now. I'm going to have a beard full of grays by the time we undo all the damage that Donald Trump has done. And people you're upset about this for what? I saw somebody upset because they gave Elizabeth Warren credit and they didn't give Bernie Sanders credit. Really? Now, I'm going to be honest with you. One of the questions I asked Bernie Sanders when I was at a town hall with him earlier this summer, I asked him about impeachment. And this summer, he was opposed to it. He was opposed to it at the same time Elizabeth Warren was calling for it. I honestly don't think that matters. I don't think it matters, and I don't think it's a point for contention. I don't think it's a thing for us to even argue over because Bernie came around to it eventually, like a month later. I like to take credit for it because I pressured him at that town hall meeting, but that would be kind of presumptuous of me. But the point is, why is anyone on the left upset about this? There's literally no reason for us to put ourselves in a position where we have to be angry about the Speaker of the House finally doing what needed to be done and commencing an impeachment inquiry. Literally no reason. But again, I guess it's more important for some people to have a position of opposition towards the Democrats than it is to embrace opposition to the white supremacists in chief.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
And as always, I'd like to take a minute of every show to thank our newest patrons. If you, sir, ma'am, or non-gender conforming individual are tired of all the ads that happen before and after the show, then consider becoming a patron. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and become a patron today. Thank you to John A. John, you are the only patron that signed up yesterday. So my friend, you are the real MVP. We couldn't do it without you. Now, everyone else, go and be like John. Be cool. Be cool like John and become a patron. www.patreon.com/The BPD Show. Get access to bonus content and get access to ad-free versions of this show. Because, I listen to my own ads. Just so you know, I don't make you suffer through them, and I don't suffer through them myself. But I also listen because every time I listen, I get a coin. But anyway, I digress. Okay, so I had a chance. A friend of mine is a campaign manager for a gentleman running for Congress in Colorado. His name is Ike McCorkle, and I had a chance to speak with him briefly about his campaign, but more than just a campaign, because I'm not doing, like 4 years ago I interviewed everybody who was running for office. I'm not doing that this time around. But I'm doing this interview because I'm interested in the shift that's happening in the 4th District of Colorado. We're seeing this happening all over the country where districts that were traditionally Republican are slowly but surely shifting towards the left. And there's a possibility to turn this district blue. So here's my interview with him. Joining me now is Ike McCorkle. He is candidate for U.S. Congress for Colorado's 4th District. He is a Marine, a combat wounded Marine, retired, and he is he considers himself to be a post-partisan populist Democrat. That's a lot there, Ike. First of all, thanks so much for joining me. How are you today?
I'm great, but I got to point out that I think you missed one little part of the line, which is a post-partisan.
Yes.
Post-partisan populist Democrat. So,
what does that mean? Break that down for me.
Move beyond our partisanship.
And how does that look? So we're going to talk about your campaign, but that's really intriguing. Post-partisan populist Democrat. How can someone be a post-partisan Democrat in an era where it is hyper-partisan? What's your strategy there?
Yeah. So I started looking at our history because I recognized the divisiveness that existed in our politics through the 16th cycle. I had a lot of friends that, of course, were conservatives because, career military service kind of tends to correlate sometimes with conservative politics. And so I've worked with people who I know are good and authentic and dedicated to, our nation and our republic and our democratically elected, form of governance. Mm-hmm. So from my perspective, we've been kind of separated by wedge issues that don't necessarily define how connected we really are and how much we really have more in common than we have in difference with our neighbors. And a lot of my neighbors happen to be Republicans. So my vision is a government that takes care of the entire constituency and not just a third of it. And the way our politics go nowadays, no matter who wins the election, 2/3 or so of our constituents are, after the election, left out of the decision-making process. And I think that's the beginning of our partisan breakdown. It starts at the county level, and it starts at the district level. And it's because after an election, either the independents and the Democrats or the Democrats and the independents the Republicans and the independents, or the Republicans and or Democrats and independents are left out of the decision-making process after every election. And we need to start practicing inclusive leadership. And I was taught this as a Marine, that you have to take your strongest subordinates and peers and bring them into the decision-making process to form the best plan. And by excluding 2/3 of our constituency after every election, it begins that breakdown. And so I'm going to every county in my district, and I'm recruiting a independent, a Republican, and a Democrat to serve as a citizen advisory commission to my campaign. I'm going to hire them on my staff as we transition into being a congressional office. And I think just by doing that and having them included in the decision-making process and included in the formation of our policy and platform, that we can start to break down that divide and start making progress in places where we can, like energy infrastructure transition and job creation.
All right, let's talk about your race then. And I totally get what you're saying there. But the first things first, for you to be able to implement that, you got to win the race. You're running up against Ken Buck, Republican. Right. He's been there. The last election, he beat Karen McCormick. He beat her pretty handily, about 21 points. Yeah. So it looks like a generally strong Republican stronghold. Do you think it's your message of unity that's going to win over Republicans in this era of Trump?
Well, I think the message of unity is definitely something that's going to play a role. But the real message of unity that speaks to the people in my district, and I think speaks to people in general, is an economic message. And a message that we have a plan to provide the district with good paying jobs, that we can invest in our educational institutions, build rural healthcare facilities and schools, pave our roads and repair our bridges, and invest in policies that set conditions that bring about an improvement in the quality of life for blue-collar, working-class citizens and farmers in our district, that are going to open markets for our farmers. We have wheat farmers and corn farmers in our district, and hemp farmers that need markets for their crops.
Right.
And there's a low-skilled labor shortage right now going on in our country, so we need to address immigration in a comprehensive way, in a humanitarian, humane fashion. And there's a lot of issues where, when I talk to Republicans and Democrats and independents specifically in the district, that we all see eye to eye on. And they're all wrapped around job creation and improving people's quality of life and lifting the livable wage in the district and investing in our schools and setting up our kids for success. I think that economic message is what speaks to the people in CD4.
Right. Okay. So the unity part comes in, people looking out for their material interests, looking for these jobs, for the economic package that you're offering. That's where you feel like everyone in your district, regardless of their whether they're Republican or independent or Democratic, they should be able to join forces with policies like you're proposing.
Yeah, that create good paying, sustainable jobs that lift the livable wage in the district and improve our quality of life. And that's for the average citizen. And that's the type of policies that the incumbent is just not voting for or supporting. He's voted against federal grants for rural water infrastructure improvements and voted against the renewal of the Violence Against Women Act. is just not supporting policy or legislation that's in keeping with the will or the interests of our people.
Right.
And we have 189,000 independents in the district. So the numbers are there. We just have to bring that strong economic message. And we're not going to ever agree on all of the issues, but that's fine. I mean, that's why we live in a pluralistic, inclusive democratic republic,
right?
That serves all of the citizenry. And that strong economic message, those are the types of things that can bring people together. We can make progress and start breaking down the partisan divide from the county to the district all the way up to the national level of government.
Right. Are there any other? I don't see any other Democrats in the primaries. Are you the only one running in the primaries for District 4?
Yeah, I've done my best to get my name out. So right now we're the only registered campaign in the primary, and I'm hoping to keep it that way. But I'd also be happy for some, robust debate on the issues and topics. And sometimes a good primary does that. So,
right.
I think that we should select the best candidate that has the background and the platform to, lift the livable wage and quality of life in the district and appeal to the demographics in our district. And I think my background as a combat wounded, retired Marine Corps spec operator and officer, it has an appeal in our district.
I'm also reading that a lot of the progressive movement that has been sweeping the nation has also been sweeping your district specifically. So you're not out there by yourself fighting for progressive causes and progressive platforms. It seems like you may have some help there in the district.
Yeah, there are a lot of kind of disaffected folks in the district that, and rightfully so, because they've been economically disenfranchised, and more so under this administration than any time since the 80s. Farmers in our district are seeing their bankruptcy rates increase by 13%, and seeing the federal government not make good on its promises to, provide them with the additional subsidies that they need, that when they do receive them aren't even on par with half of their loss from the tariff and trade war taxes on the middle class. And that's what I call them, tariff taxes on the middle class, because that's what they are.
Absolutely.
But, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Ike, there's a lot. The primary is in June, right? And then you have the general election that's coming along. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for us to speak going forward. Take care of my friend over there, Mike Solomon. It's my first time getting a chance to speak with you, but he vouches for you. And I'm glad we had a chance to do this interview because I like your policy ideas. I like what you're trying to bring. And I think the people of District 4 are going to like it as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And, I just want to bring people together and legislate for the entire constituency. I hope you guys check out my platform at ikeforco.com, and maybe we can get back to a government that serves us.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Discussion about what the Speaker of the House and the House Democrats did yesterday. And, we have watched now, ever since President Trump was elected, the House Democrats have been careening from impeachment theory to impeachment theory. They've careened from target to target. For a while, 10 days or so ago, they were focused on impeaching Justice Kavanaugh. Now they're back to focusing on President Trump. But what we see repeatedly is a complete lack of focus on, concern about evidence and facts. And what Speaker Pelosi did yesterday really was the worst we've seen yet, where she announced an impeachment inquiry without any evidence, without seeing a transcript of the phone call at issue, without seeing any details from the supposed whistleblower. And when you think about what that does, both from the perspective of our constitutional obligation and from the perspective of our national security, it ought to give every American grave concerns that they are dealing with this in a way that is absolutely such a flagrant disregard of their constitutional responsibility.
I'm pretty sure that was the voice of Liz Cheney, the daughter of Dick Cheney. And I'm just kind of taken aback by the fact that she has the unmitigated gall to get out there and talk about someone putting this nation's national security at risk. Her dad. But anyway, I play that clip because I want you to know how this is going to play out over the next couple of months. Republicans are going to use this as an opportunity to try to present themselves as the responsible ones. But they said nothing, absolutely nothing, as Donald Trump grifted off of the office of the presidency. They said nothing when he put children in cages. They said nothing when he embarrassed this nation, not only in terms of how he behaved, but also in terms of policies that he put into motion. And it's just the greatest absurdity. The greatest, the most asinine thing that could possibly happen would be for us to let them get away with trying to pretend like they are reasonable. They are not reasonable. They are unreasonable. We cannot be reasonable with unreasonable people, and we cannot let them try to get that high ground, a sense of moral superiority. This was the right call. Impeaching this president was 100% the right call. Don't take my word for it. Here's Lindsey Graham saying the same thing.
So the point I'm trying to make is you don't even have to be convicted of a crime to lose your job in this constitutional republic. If this body determines that your conduct as a public official is clearly out of bounds in your role, because impeachment is not about punishment. Impeachment is about cleansing the office. Impeachment is about restoring honor and integrity to the office.
I agree. Man, do I ever agree with Lindsey Graham. Except he said this back in 97, 98, when they were impeaching Bill Clinton, and they impeached him over an alleged, his encounter with Monica Lewinsky. Right? That was, to them, sexual impropriety, and lying about it is an impeachable offense. Then, by all means, making money off of the office of the presidency must be an impeachable offense. Obstruction of justice is an impeachable offense. Quid pro quo with the president of the Ukraine to get someone to investigate your political rivals. That's an impeachable offense. We must cleanse this office. We must purify it. We must make it holy again. As holy. And if you guys want to go further and talk about all the transgressions of the office of the presidency that aren't just germane to Donald Trump, then we can do that as well. But I have absolutely no problem whatsoever, and I think it's a good thing. And Republicans have to be put on the spot, because whether we are going to admit it or not, there are actually Republicans who are tired of the grifter in chief. Some, not many, and I don't think that we should have tried to appeal to them. But I think in terms of the politics of this, putting the Republicans on the record and saying whether or not they support this criminal president, I think is absolutely a win, because they're going to either have to oppose him, abstain from voting, or say that they are actually okay with all the things that Donald Trump has done. And then they will go down in history as co-conspirators, as being complicit with one of the most criminal presidents that we have had in our lifetime. That's all I have for you today. Go to patreon.com/the BPD. I know it's like my 8th time asking you, and I'm going to keep asking because, well, I can't do it without you. This is our show together. Patreon.com/the BPD show. I'll see you tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and support the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Are you still here? I needed about 10 more seconds worth of content to make this an even 30-minute episode. So do me a favor. If you're still here, tweet at me Easter egg, and I'll follow you on Twitter. See you next time.